Seer Show is a live broadcast of truth seekers and believers, empowering the evolution of consciousness. Rafael and Celeste will dive deeper than the mainstream media while answering the mind's deeper questions and transforming conversations. They will have unique guest speakers who will share knowledge, tools, and techniques to create coherence in our mind, body, and spirit.
Good morning, good morning.
And good evening here from Queensland.
Yes, absolutely. You know, one of the things that is extremely amazing is that sweater. I love it.
I have to show it off. The crazy thing though is I'm actually in beautiful hot Queensland here in Australia. So it's really just symbolic because I'm actually already getting quite hot. So, but I've got a lot of it's Christmas. I love Christmas, Raphael. I think it's a beautiful season of the year. All the Sinatra music, the stockings, the dog costumes. Not that my dogs are green, but I absolutely love them. So, and the sweaters. I had to do it for this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think we have a really great present for everyone who's going to be watching us today, right? Or even on the replay. You know, one of the things that our next guest, I love the fact that she doesn't have one first name, but to me, she's got two. Amanda Kate happens to be the author of Devine, Messy Human, a spiritual guide to prioritizing internal truth over external influence. She's a kinesiologist, mentor, archetypal type of coach. She's a mother, and guess what? A heck of a lot more. We're going to find out more about that today, right?
Bring on.
You know, when we think about the kind of people that we have on our show, I'm going to tell you, Amanda's just top. Amanda, come on. Thank you so much for joining us today. And there you are, not in a huge hot sweater, but in this cool outfit. How are you today?
Yeah, no, doing really well. We finally got sun in Melbourne. So, as Celeste knows, we haven't had too much of that down here. We tend to be one of the colder cities in Australia. So, it has been lovely actually feeling the sun on my skin and some heat today. It was beautiful. So, yeah,
nice.
Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us. How do you feel about the holidays?
Oh, do you know, it's really strange this year. I think the last few years have, I don't know, it just hasn't felt the same as normal. But this year, I have to admit, I finally made a Christmas cake for the first time in like
Really?
8 or 9 years. And I've made my first fruit mince
Wow.
for my mince pies. And I've never done it before. And yet this year I was really drawn to. So I'm really curious about, you know, I guess what's unfolding and what's playing out, because I haven't had the urge to do things like that for a very long time. So yeah, so we'll just I'm entering it with curiosity and inquisitiveness, and yeah, but I was, like I say, I have not had that draw to do that Christmas baking, to do that Christmas cooking, whereas before that was like a cornerstone of my holidays. So yeah, big changes.
There you go. Right. We also, you know, by the way, great book. I am absolutely loving your book.
Thank
You know,
you.
when you look at Divine, Messy Human, wow. What an amazing book. I started reading it right away. I was like, wow, this is one of my favorite books so far. You know, I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of authors send me books. And I guess I'm a collector. But
Yes.
I'm not the kind of collector that doesn't, you know, like people who collect things, they leave it in the box so you don't look at it. I actually go through it. And here's the difference. When I read a book, I start writing notes too.
Yes.
Awesome.
Because your thoughts,
Sometimes.
your thoughts make me think deeper. And man, thank you for writing that book. Great book.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Look, it was one of those things that have been in my head for so long, because it was the tools and stuff I needed for my own journey. And then once we created the container, it just flowed and it all came out. So yeah, look, it was an interesting process, and one that challenged myself and my editor, actually. But it was a beautiful process to dive deeper into myself, to dive deeper into, what was holding things up for her, and just to see where the stickiness was in certain parts of the process. It was fascinating.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And
So
I also have to say there is a second book that I noticed. I know we're talking about the one with the messy human, but the other one also, Amanda, I really have to compliment you on, which was the Anxiety Relief Handbook.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Christmas season is probably a very good time to read that one as well. And you have a digital version of that. So
Yes.
I had reading about that a little bit. So that's really, really cool.
Oh, thank you. It's really strange. Like that book process was such a different process because I was a multi-author in it, and it was a different time. It was during 2020 that we were doing that book, and it's like chalk and cheese, the two processes. I thought I'd do the multi-author to give me the experience of doing, my own authorship, and how wrong I was. How wrong I was. But thank you. Yeah, look, it was a great project, and it was a great one for my first one, but to compare the two, no comparison. Chalk and cheese.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love the name, Divine Messy Human. What prompted that name, besides the incredible stories and everything that you went through in your life?
I have always sort of talked about our messily human experience, that we are here as humans to learn certain things. We have free will choice, which messes everything up from this divine plan. And I love just letting people know that we are so divinely messy in our humanness. And actually, when I was on the phone with my editor when we were deciding on the book, because there's another chapter in the book that was actually the original working title. And I had a few printed, and I'm guessing if you look through the contents page, you may well guess which one it was. It was the one with the C word in the title. So I do actually have it printed with that on as well. As two different covers.
I would like.
I have a few left, only a few, but I have a few left.
Select few. There you go.
It is, yeah. It's a special order request for the Secret Book Club, but I originally had it as that, and I'm like, I can't market it under that. That is just, or I could, but I wasn't in a place to at that point, and I thought that's just going to create a whole heap of storm in a teacup that I don't need. And I wanted the book to speak for itself. And I still remember the trip home from work, and I'd spoken to a close girlfriend of mine, and she went, "Oh, the C word, I just cannot do it. It's really divisive for me." Do you know, by the time I actually printed the book with that cover, she bought the Secret Book Club title, which is actually available on Amazon, by the way, for those who want to check it out. So I rang my editor going, okay, we need another title for this book. And I'd said originally it was going to be Messily Human. And even in that conversation, as I was talking about Messily Human, I went, no, because we need the divine in there, because we are divine first.
Yes.
And then I said to her, oh my God, it's Divine Messy Human. That was it. And it was interesting. The night before, I'd gone to bed with the idea that I really cannot. And just to, am I allowed to show the other book cover to your audience?
Yes,
Are they?
Absolutely.
It is. Yeah, I am a lady, by the way. But it was. And we were talking, and I just said, there's going to be so many roadblocks, and I want the book to speak for itself. I want the contents of the book to be the thing that people talk about, not the title.
Right.
Because looking at Mark Manson's work, for example, the first one with the F word on the cover, it was very, obviously polarizing. A lot of people bought it just for the title. And I kind of wanted my work to do something different. So I was having a chat about that, and I was so stuck on having that title. I was absolutely stuck on it. And I went to bed that night going, okay, it really doesn't feel right for me to market it under that. I'm happy to print some covers with that for those people who love it, like it, love me, think it's hilarious, all of that sort of stuff. But I need something that I can stand behind and be really damn proud of. And I do behind that book cover, by the way. And also it's that and both and more situation. And also I wanted one that I could be, I guess, safer in marketing.
Right.
And also that spoke to the truth of the book. My whole book is about being divine and messy and human. And that conversation with my editor, it was probably all over the place, as a lot of my conversations are. But I said to her, I think I've got it. Messily human. The interesting part for me was going to bed the night before. I went, I need the answer. I have to have the answer to what my other book title is going to be, because we're getting close to publishing date and I just don't know what it's going to be. And by that next morning, having asked for that guidance, I'd rung her and said, we're publishing it with 2 titles. And she went, that hasn't been done before. I said, it is now.
Yes, good.
And I said, I still don't know what the other title is. That was the beginning of the day, and the end of the day, we worked it all out, which was just phenomenal. It was so much fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When you think about asking for that intervention, if you will, right? It is there. I haven't published any of the books that I've written because the time is not right.
Yeah.
But a lot of the titles have come to me because I've asked.
Yeah.
And I've woken up, well, it is 4:30 in the morning here, but I've gotten up way earlier. Like one time it was like 3:12. And I was like, I had to get up. I had to come into my office and write. And I had the title, I had chapters, and it was like just a scurvy, And, it's very interesting that you asked for, if you will, like I called it, an intervention.
Yeah.
I do that every night.
Yeah.
Every night I go to sleep and I say, I grew up Roman Catholic, but I don't know if I'm Roman Catholic. I am just a spiritual believer, right?
Yeah.
I grew up that way because that's what my family was. But I got fed up with that whole nonsense. And I'm not saying it's nonsense for the people who are still in it, but for me, I didn't feel the connection, but I still felt a connection to God. So I needed to find my own way. And I picked up the Bible and I threw it away. I picked it up and I threw it. I got mad. And then one day I said, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it smarter. I'm going to start listening to a podcast on how to read the Bible, how to interpret it, because it is somewhat confusing. It is so contradictory.
Yeah.
And I said, but every night when I go to sleep, I say, Lord, give me insight. Give me a chance to do something positive for the world. Make me your vessel so I can bring good to the world. And I do that every night. And I think that sometimes I have ideas, I have concepts, I have designs. I'm a designer and I like to create.
Yeah.
So for me, that is huge. So thank you for sharing how your title came to be.
My pleasure.
And creating these amazing books. There was one Instagram live feed that you did that really inspired me, and it was back in November, and you said people want to change, and to write creative books you need to not be in your autopilot, not be in that programmed habits. And you said that beautiful sentence, you got to allow space. And with kinesiology, you help movement, you do all of that spiritual work as well, to relax more and be more flexible toward life, and be more open to have that space for intuition and good intentions to come. So tell us more about that, because I really love that update you did in November, going, I'm here to help people to create more space for magic, for mystery. Tell us more about that.
I think the thing is, we are built as human beings to move through life at walking pace. We are built to move maybe at a run if we're being chased by something. And yet we hurtle through life at 40, 60, 80, 100 kilometers an hour. We are constantly bombarded by messages. We are moving at such a pace, and we forget to slow down. Yet in the stillness, in the slowness, is where we find our access to our intuition. It's where we find our connection to others. It's where we find our magic and our creativity. In the fast-paced world, our attention is always drawn outside of ourselves. It is always drawn to those shiny lights and those loud bings and all of those other things. And so for me, allowing the space is by bringing that world in a little bit, by moving slower, by exploring what is, by sitting with my own self. And that's not as easy as it sounds, because only 7 short years ago, I hated myself, actively hated myself, to the point where I would walk in a bathroom and catch sight of myself in the mirror, and I would want to smash that mirror.
Wow.
And it's because I couldn't sit with myself, because I knew I wasn't living to my internal truth. I was not living to what I needed to be doing. I was not expressing myself in the world the way that I needed to. And I didn't even know what that was, because I hadn't allowed myself to get to know who I was as a person, because I was so busy trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And so I think the whole idea of slowing down actually in itself takes work, because we need to work with other people to see what our stories are, to see what perspectives can be brought in, to clear some of the traumas that we're holding so dearly to our heart as part of ourself, to learn to love those parts of ourself that are less fun, that are messy, that are shameful, that are embarrassing.
And life comes with suffering. It will come back, and it's about how we handle it and how flexible in our movement, physical or emotional, that we are.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
on your website, you wrote there's 4 different types of stress, and it's the emotional, physical, chemical, and electrical.
Yeah.
Elaborate more into that.
So the way that we look with kinesiology is that the universe is 4% physical matter. And quantum physicists there's a book out there called The 4% Universe, and it's on heaps of websites. That's the quantum physics thing. So this meat suit is 4% of the picture. So what's the other 96%? It's our mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, financial, relational, sexual. All of these different parts of ourselves feed into us as a whole. And that is a really important part to look at, because my physical health had been so detrimentally affected, but not because I was physically unwell. It was because of the emotional stress, because of the psychological stress, because of all these other stresses that were coming to me. So the way that we categorize stress in kinesiology is we have physical stress, which is stress to the physical meat suit part of us. There's emotional stress, which as it says on the tin, is the emotions that we suffer or deal with on a daily basis. We have electrical stress, which is the way that the messages are traveling around the body. And we have chemical stress, which is obviously about what is going into the body. So are we eating bioavailable foods? Are we taking in bioavailable supplements? Are we eating soul-nourishing foods that are grown in the earth, or are we eating everything that's processed? And so the chemical component is much more about our hormonal balance, the food that we're bringing in, and how we're able to process that or not. So they're the main types of stress that we look at. But everything basically comes down to that energetic imbalance.
And then what about electromagnetic fields in that part of interfering then, as you said, with the electrical part, sending signals from neurotransmitters to your muscles, your consciousness, and all of that?
Look, I mean, obviously anything electrical is going to affect an electrical system. And the way I look at it is when we're stressed, we tend to go into a couple of different scenarios. One is that we are those people where every light switch and every appliance in the house is switched off and there is no activity. And they are the people who sit on the couch and watch Netflix and, you know, wait until that little sign pops up. Are you still watching this? And then they just go, yep, keep playing until keep playing. And they literally do nothing. And then you've got the people who, you know, which was me.
I think we lost Amanda for a second.
Oh,
Yes.
There you are.
no, I came back.
You're back.
And then, you know, we're literally everything in the house is switched on. And I often float from one to the other, but you will notice that often your partner is the opposite to the one you are. So my partner is very much when he's stressed, everything is switched off. Nothing works. For me, I'm much more of a busy person. And this is where you sometimes get that resentment in relationships of he just sits there doing nothing and, you know, they're always buzzing around and because they're handling stress so differently.
So a lot of people love, I guess Netflix is big for everybody, right? When you think about it. You know, Amanda, one of the things that you're 1,000% right is that we're the only animal that truly puts stress on ourselves, right? Because think about every animal out there. Think of any animal. Is it stressed? Is a tarantula stressed? Is a monkey stressed? Is a donkey stretched? You know, stretched or you know, stretched in all different ways, right? When we think about the pressure that we put on ourselves, but not only that, we go even deeper and we make sure someone else is stressed, that we not only hold it for ourselves, but we give it.
Yes.
Why do we have to give it to other people? And here's the thing. Why do we take it as well? Like if somebody's stressed, you're like, oh, give me that stress. I really love it. But we're the only creatures in this world
that can
that
conflict
do that.
on ourselves.
Yeah.
And
well, if you
thoughts, right? The thoughts don't even, most of it is not even real. So there's only a small percentage of what we've made up in our mind that's sending those signals, stress signals, as you said, electrical and.
Yeah, 100%. But if you think about physiologically the way that we are built, and I'm not talking about tribal in terms of that cultural appropriation of tribal, we were all born originally as the original humans to be tribal animals. Right. So if you think about our brain and the way it works, it goes straight to I am accepted by the tribe and I fit in, or I will be cast out to the wilderness and I will die. Right. And every single one of our decisions and every single one of our behaviors has at some point been a way that we've been accepted by our tribe. So even our unresourceful, crappy behaviors are helping keep us attached to that tribe and helping keep us alive to the next day. Because if we're not accepted by those people who bear us into the world, if we are thrown out, we are very, very vulnerable on our own as a species, the same as any other species. The male lion who gets cast out into the wilderness has a very small chance of survival because he doesn't have that pack. Or pride, I should say. And we are the same. And physiologically, our brain goes into a very quick assumption of, if I don't behave the way I've always behaved, or in this unresourceful way, or in the way that I've been programmed to, I'll die. So all of our behaviors are live, die, live, die, live, die. But what we're doing to get to that reaction that we often is the bit that we see, is we're putting it through all of our internal processing. We are adding all of the stories that we're carrying about ourselves, all of the stories we've been given. It's all of our subconscious programming. It is everything. It is our genetic inheritances. It is our past life stuff. Literally everything is feeding into the way that we filter the information that's coming in, making us in that very moment a snap decision, live, die. What is the behavior most likely in this situation that is going to help me live to tomorrow? Because that's our basic need as a human being, is to live to tomorrow so that we can keep the tribe going by having more offspring. And often what is happening, if I look at all of my unresourceful behavior, and let's face it, there's a shit ton, and that's the official, measurement scale, by the way.
Right.
But I look at that and I go, every single one of those behaviors at some point kept me safe. If it was my defensiveness, if it was my resentment, if it was my overreaction, if it was my oversensitivity, whatever it was something that kept me safe at the time. And that's huge when we start to realize that every single one of our behaviors, whether good, bad, indifferent, kept us safe at some point. Now, most of our programming happens pre-2 in that amygdala part of the brain. A lot of the rest of it happens pre-7. So the way I explain it to clients and other people I work with is, I had this vision. I actually have a photo of it, of my son who had this really cute, sweet pair of overalls and a little collared shirt. And my mum was helping me put together this obelisk to grow beans up in the garden. And he ran inside and got his little Fisher-Price toolkits. Other brands are available, by the way. His just happened to be that. I'm not gaining, references from it. But he went and grabbed those tools and he tried to help my mum with those big grown-up jobs. Now, were his tools effective? No. Did he look super cute and was it just adorable? Yes. Now, when we think about adults using unresourceful behaviors, I often see those people in front of me in that same outfit he was wearing, with their little Fisher-Price toolkit, thinking they're helping with big people jobs. And then, with a big hardware store, for example, some people will drive straight past it. That's not for me. I don't go in there. Other people will go, I wonder what that is. Some people will sort of put their nose in the door and go, do I want this or not? Some people will stick to a section of gardening or painting or whatever. We know that all of the tools are available to us in this universe to make whatever amazing life that we want, this incredible castle. We can build what we want if we are prepared to go and learn how to use the tools to do it. If I went into the power tool section and handed a circular saw to my son at 18 months, he would have done some damage to himself.
Or you.
Or me, or my mother.
Right.
But if you see some of the adults who aren't using these resourceful behaviors, it's because they are still in their overalls with their little Fisher-Price toolkit, thinking that they're doing a great job. Now, that for me brings out my compassion when I see people acting unresourcefully, because I go, okay, that's where they're at. That's the only tools they've got access to right now. And let's face it, when we are in stress and we're in that back brain and we can't access this front creative brain, we've all got our Fisher-Price toolkit. So by the way, this is no judgment to anyone because we all end up there. We can have the fanciest tools in the world, but when we are stressed, when we are in that fight and flight reactivity, in our back brain reaction, that tool to that key to the tool shed is lost. We cannot find it. We may have access to it somewhere, but we cannot find it for the life of us. And we don't even think to look for it.
Mm.
We only think to go back to that program behavior. And I think that's what the work is all about, is understanding and unpacking those unresourceful behaviors that kept us safe at some point. Because the more we unpack that, the more in the moment we can consciously go, whoa, hang on a minute. I'm heading down that path again. I know this path. I'm familiar on this path. Do I really want to continue down it?
You know, Amanda, you made me think of, when a child, and they call it terrible twos, right? Because I had that as well. And I was one of those crazy kids that I'm Colombian, and I grew up in Colombia. And I literally, the houses were not made with the way they are now. They were solid walls. I used to bang my head on the wall because of my frustration or my temper tantrums.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was the most calming way that it got taken away from me. My family held me down in a courtyard and just kept pouring cold water over me. No matter how much I screamed and cried, they just held me and kept pouring cold water over me. And here's the most incredible thing they did. They didn't talk to me. No matter how much I screamed and I thought I was being tortured, it was for my safety. They did it. It's like, we don't know how to help this kid because he's banging his head on the wall. He's going to get brain damage. Maybe that's why I'm like I am today. But what they did is they kept pouring, buckets and buckets of cold water, and then they let go of me. They didn't talk to me. I went behind, we had outdoor furniture. I went behind the furniture. I cried for hours and I stayed there. I never had that episode again. From that moment on, because it brought me back to like, wow, the water was, at first it was shocking. And then it was calming. And so what happens to us is, and I think that's why I'm such a calm person today, because of that experience. I never knew. People are like, you're so calm. You don't get mad. You don't get, and I don't. It's because I understand. And a lot of people need to learn to understand that sometimes your anger is not doing anyone any good. When you don't use the tools available to you, like you're talking about Fisher Price tools, right?
Yeah.
You are totally at a loss. When your anger appears, you have choices. You have choices you can make. But here's the thing, sometimes, and I said it before, right? With the emotions that people bring onto us, we take someone else's anger as well. And then we contribute to it, right? So two forces are never going to have peace. So one of the things I also teach little kids and I teach adults, and one of the things we do is we take the right hand and we say power, right? For those of you watching, if this looks like the left, this is my right hand, we go power, and we take the left hand and we say peace, and then we go peace over power. And then we make a promise, right? We make a promise that we are going to be the best at whatever it is we're doing. But so many people miss that. They miss the fact that we have the power to make our lives amazing. But it's up to us, isn't it?
It is. And we're not taught that. Your kids obviously are lucky and they're getting that beautiful education. But I often look at those things that I was taught, and it was reading, writing, arithmetic.
Right.
There was no emotional fluency in there. There was no, these are your emotions. How do you deal with them? What do you do? Let's face it, with anger, we are in fear. We've had our boundaries violated. We are feeling hurt. Sometimes anger is a really great emotion because we feel like we're doing something. And so we will just spew it out like an emotional vomit over the people in front of us. And it's never helpful. But in that moment, oh my God, does it feel good? Because we're letting it out. And what
Yeah.
we don't have to do is go into the vulnerability of what you did really hurt me.
Mm.
And for me, I learned not to go into the vulnerability because as a child, what did I get? You're overly sensitive. You can't take a joke. You need thicker skin. It was always my fault.
Mm.
Nobody went, yeah, I was an asshole. Sorry about that.
Right.
It was always your fault. You're too sensitive. And I'm like, hang on, something doesn't fit right with that.
Mm.
Mm.
And so you're right. We're not taught how to deal with anger. And especially as women, especially as good girls, anger is not one of those emotions that we are allowed to dip our toe into and explore
Mm-mm.
because we get knocked back onto our, narrow path. The way that, say, crying or showing emotions in that way for boys is often, narrowly defined.
Right.
And when we get into being, women of color and minorities, anger is even less able to be exposed. And so we're being told certain emotions are good and certain emotions are bad, and certain emotions make you better and certain emotions make you worse, and some make you stronger and some make you weaker. And there's all of this judgment around emotion.
Mm.
But emotion is simply energy in motion. That's
Yeah.
it. It is telling us what we need to, or what is right for our soul and what is not so right for our soul.
We're talking about also childhood, and it'd be so wonderful if at younger age we would teach these things, And my question to you was, because I saw on the website this beautiful photo with you with actually a child as well.
Mm.
And for the viewers and the listeners, going into kinesiology, what's the age? I mean, surely we can teach and share all of this knowledge at quite young age.
It's really, really interesting. Yes, we can. And I think it is so important. My children have actually learned most of the stuff through osmosis. It has been by me demonstrating the behaviors. And so most of the time when children come into my clinic, I hate to say it, but they're not the problem.
Mm.
Because their conditioning, up till the age of 7, we are part of our mother's energy field.
Yeah.
And that's why it is that I lovingly say this, children go through that little arsehole phase around the age of 7 and 8 where they're pushing every boundary known to man.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if either of you are parents, but do you remember that stage? Yeah.
And also 8 is the age where the brain starts going, now I feel and I can express, I can make my own decisions. There's a huge brain shift of consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that separation from the mother's energy field.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're no longer part of that other being. They are on their own. And so it's like, oh, hang on, where do I stop and others begin? And how do I learn that?
Yeah.
And so children are sponges. And what they're often doing is reflecting back to us our own behaviors, our own beliefs, our own shit. And of course, we're looking at them going, oh, you got some problems.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's a reflection of the parent, right?
Yeah, that's right.
One of the things I always say is we have code, right? Think about a computer, right? When we're first born, we kind of have our code because we don't know any better. Oh, we cry when we're hungry, that's our code.
Yeah.
When we got to get changed, that's our code. And eventually our parents start writing the code for us, right? Then we go to school and the teachers are writing our code for us. Then we get to a certain age and like 8, 9, or even 7, it depends on how mature we understand things. And then we kind of like start to really see, can we break away from our parents' code or this code? And then we totally break the code when we get to be teenagers, right? We can devastate the code. But what winds up happening is, as we get older and older, we let other people write code for us. So maybe our partner, even our own children, maybe our parents come back into the picture and start writing our code. And so sometimes we're infected, if you will, by this virus that we need to really step away and do a whole reboot. Like turn your computer off, put it back on. You have to reboot yourself. One of the things that and Celeste and I were talking about this, that every morning and it doesn't matter when I'm up, I take a cold shower
Mhm.
because that is like a poof, wakes you
Yeah.
up, invigorates you, really gets your cells moving, and it says, "Hey, wake up!
Yeah.
You are this is your chance to start anew." And for
Yeah.
me, every day it's a beautiful new beginning
Yeah.
because my yesterdays don't define me.
Mm.
Today will define my tomorrow a little bit, right? But it is my choices, right?
Yeah.
It's me rewriting my code. I don't wait to do it, months later. I rewrite my code every single day.
Mm.
And I like the way, Amanda, you said it's important to slow down your
Mhm.
movements, your flexibility, your thoughts. And I actually believe the cold water gives me energy, but it slows down my decision making, my movements in terms of I'm going to think first, then act, react. So I find the cold showers do that to my body.
Yeah.
Sort of. So, with besides the two amazing books, you are a kinesiologist, and what else? If people want to obviously come in contact with you, being in Melbourne, what else do you do with your clients in terms of bringing them back to that space, slowing down, and bringing them back to well-being?
Well, the way I talk about, my work, I guess, is I'm a transformational kinesiologist and coach. And the reason I say that is because most people go, I know what I want to do with my life.
Mm.
And I can tell you now, spirit, source has a completely different picture. We only know what we can know within our limited mindset. And that's all we can know. When we start taking the blinkers off, we can start going, okay, this is there. We can start asking a few more questions. And so I've actually literally just signed a new client. And I said to her, I can't give you an outline of what this program is going to look like. I can tell you how long we're going to work together for, and I can guarantee you are not going to end the program the person you walked into it. But I cannot tell you what is going to happen in that time and how we're going to actually move you from one point to another, because this could take us in any direction. And the reason is people will come in and go, well, I need to sort out my relationships to be able to have everything else fall into place. Well, sometimes source will go, yeah, you do, but these are the things you need to do first. Or, one of my big stories, as is a lot of people's, money and wealth creation. And there's a reason that is the last thing that is falling into place for me. And it's getting there. I can see it. I can feel it. I can taste it. I can smell it. But you know why? Because that's the last thing. Like, I am living if I had told my old self 7 to 10 years ago that I would be living this life, I'd have told you were freaking crazy. I'd have told you that you were mental and that this kind of life did not exist.
Right.
I did not believe that this existed. Every morning I wake up, I walk my dog for 7 kilometers on mostly beautiful beach. I go to a cafe where there's this beautiful little community. It's high level stuff, but it's the typical community that we grew up in. Hi, how's your day? What's the weather doing?
Right.
Lovely, nice conversation. I'm with a partner who loves and respects me. My children are flourishing. And I am doing it in a way where I can actually say that I know and love my true self.
Beautiful.
Now, I understand why that is the last piece of the puzzle. And yet, for how many years did I work on my money imprinting? Now, that's important work to do. But look at all those other bits of wealth I have created. A fabulous partner, fabulous children, a fabulous new home, a beach on my doorstep. Like, I am living in so much wealth, and my health, compared to where it was 10 years ago, is phenomenal. And I look at that and go, how much wealth is in all of those things? So it's not the money that's the issue.
Not at all.
No.
It was all those other things. And so when I work with people, it very much is that, yes, you can come in to me and say you want to work on your money, and we will, because everything is interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
You just may need to go through a few doors first, because that may not be the first thing spirit wants. Sometimes it may be the first thing spirit wants, and we'll be working on it straight out the gate. And so again, and the other thing is, I don't just use kinesiology. I don't just use coaching. I bring in all of the skills that I've got from all of the different experiences, not just what I've learned in a classroom, not just what I've got paperwork for, but what I have personally experienced. And we don't just look at the body, we're looking at the mind, we're looking at the spirit, we're looking at our trauma patterns, we're looking at the programming that you were talking about. And I think the fact is, we all have programming on every single cell of our being.
Yeah.
And so we need to work out what's programming, what's me, what's programming, what's my story, if you'd asked me 7 years ago, and so many people did, just show your true self. And I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who you're talking about, because I think I'm being my true self. Now that I am where I am, I can look back and see all I was doing is trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And so I was never my true self, because I was constantly people pleasing and assuming what they wanted and projecting onto them what I thought they wanted, and trying to behave that way so that I would be accepted by the tribe and not cast out to die. So nobody knew me, including myself.
Do you also believe that, now going into Christmas 2022, the last 2 years, especially, we both in Australia, Melbourne went through a horror, even worse time the last 2 years, and I guess our Queensland. So there is quite a bit of that separation of tribe. There wasn't, I'm not going to go into the whole subject. We all spiritual people know, but isn't it now especially more the time to reach out to holistic health, chakra alignment, kinesiology, things like that? And kinesiology is very also touching. It's very close. So I truly believe now especially is the time to let people reconnect with their understanding of their position in the tribe, but maybe also who is their tribe, because it's sometimes not your immediate family. It's as you the community and the environment around us.
100%. Absolutely. Look, I think a lot of people are not reaching out at the moment because they're still in trauma. Now, you can't get into post-trauma and healing and recovery until you're out of the trauma. But a lot of this last year, 18 months, as we have slowly emerged, people are denying their trauma. They're denying the experience. They're deluding themselves that there was no experience, that it was all fine and that they got through it okay. And, I always know somebody worse than me. We all know that comparative suffering aspect. And so people will not get help for trauma until they're out of their trauma, or until they recognize they're in trauma.
Or burnt
And
out.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. And so I think you're right. There is that need for connection. There is that need for other perspectives on where we're at. And I think that is so vitally important. And I agree with you, Celeste, that part of it is that touching, that connecting. And, when I work online with people, even with kinesiology, it's the same way that the three of us are working right now. We are all tuning into each other's radio stations. We are all connected. And because energetically, we're all one anyway. And so as I'm talking to both of you, the way that I think about it is not only am I tuned into your radio stations, but I have this energetic blanket over both of you, so I can read what's going on, even through the distance. And that's exactly the same way that I do kinesiology or coaching online, is I am tuning into your radio station. I'm throwing this energetic blanket over you so that I can read what's going on without messing it with my field. Because let's face it, in a session, we want to be dealing with your stuff, not mine. Otherwise, we'll be
Yeah.
I'm not doing two for the price of one in terms of me healing myself,
Right.
but it's that sort of feeling. And so I think even when it comes to online healing, and my mentor moved to the UK during COVID, and yet I had a session with her last night, the night before. What day are we on? It was last night. Yeah, there you go. And do you know, I feel like I was held, literally held. She's such a maternal, loving, glorious figure. And I literally came out, and I've been sitting in it most of today in that beautiful, warm, embracing hug. Sometimes it is just connecting in this way, but with that energetic intention. I can feel your connections to me right now. I can feel us each reading each other's field. I can feel the way our energies are moving together. And I don't think it gets lost online. Now, yes, it is a smaller window that we've got to each other. And yet it is also the most direct line in so many ways.
You know, it's incredible that we're even able to do that, right?
Isn't it phenomenal?
Technology is beyond. And the fact that we can do this, you're in your home, Celeste is in hers, I'm in my office.
It's beautiful.
This is incredible. And the fact that there's this connection, and don't get me wrong, like you said, when you're physically present with one another, the connection is that much bigger. But there is still this connection. This is why Celeste and our connection is so big that we said we have to do something together. And we racked our brains until we finally came up with the Seer show. And I think that because we are both curious, we want to know more. We're always in search of, what can we learn today? How can we grow? Who can we grow with, and who can help us with our message? That's how the Seer show was born, because of our connection.
Yeah. 100%. Absolutely.
Amanda, what would you say is one of the biggest takeaways that you've noticed with your transformation? Because you said 7 years ago, you would want to smash that mirror.
Yeah.
Now you want to hug that girl.
Yeah.
How did you even start that transformation? Who helped you? And what was your biggest takeaway? I know that's a lot of questions. I want to know. I told you I'm curious,
no,
right?
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. And I think your biggest bit in there is who helped you, because this is not a solo journey. You know, it was funny actually, and I'll tell you this little aside story because I think it really makes a lot of sense in this. We're walking along the beach on Sunday, and my partner's obviously saying, "Oh, what are you doing tomorrow?" And we're going through our days, thinking about the start of the week and all that sort of stuff. So, I've got my last, I tend to book my mentor sessions in groups of 3 or 5 or whatever it is that I'm feeling. And I've got my last session with my mentor tomorrow, and he's like, "Okay, I just need to ask, because I've been wondering for so long, like, you're a kinesiologist. Why do you need to have sessions with another kinesiologist? Like, I don't get it." And I said to him, "Okay, it's kind of like, if you think about a doctor could probably maybe look at working out what's going on, but they still need to go to another doctor for prescriptions, for help, for other alternatives, for other perspectives. It's kind of the same." And I said, "And she's not just looking at my emotional health, she's looking at all the different aspects of me and my business, and she's a mentor as well as a kinesiologist, as well as all the other million and one facets that she is. And she's a beautiful, nourishing, nurturing figure in my life." And so it is so much about those support structures that we have. And the way I talk about it is internal versus external scaffolding. So what I did was, the thing that got me on the journey was, I thought I was massively broken. I thought there was something severely wrong with me. And so I went to my doctor and got a mental health care plan so I could go and see a psychologist. And the psychologist receptionist said, "Yes, we can get you in with the psychologist. It's it'll be middle of May until we can get you in. And then end of May, you can start her mindfulness training." And she said, "So what's going on for you?" And I gave her the sort of, I guess, polished version of what was going on. And she just looked spoke to me on the phone. She said, "So who's got your back?" And I went, "Oh, no one's ever asked me that before." Huh. And that question was really the one that started flipping everything around. And I got help from chiropractors and Chinese doctors and all of these different people. I was working with a PT. I was working with up to 5 kinesiologists at a time, to be honest, because they all worked in different ways. And once I'd found it, I was so desperate to continue the work and to explore what was going on. And it was this constant strive for, I know this isn't what life is supposed to be. I know there is something more out there. What is there something more? Because on paper, I had the clipboard and the tick boxes, and I was like, tick, 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 got it all. I've got the rich, I've got the rich, successful husband. I've got the 2 beautiful children, the beautiful home, the overseas trips. Well, we didn't have the dog at the time. I wasn't allowed to get a dog. But yeah, one of the many things. But, I had the tick box. I was a white, middle-class, Church of England raised girl who got good grades at school and went to university and worked for her dad for a little bit and went traveling and met the man, married 2 children. Everything on paper looked amazing and perfect. And yet my soul was dying. I was dying. I was in a place where I did not want to wake up and face the next day. And that journey, I started going, is everyone else doing this, or is it just me? Like, is this does not feel like the way that we are supposed to live life. What am I missing? Like, if I could not get my head around a lot of things that people would tell me were normal. I'd be like, you what? You want to spend time with your partner? Like, I don't understand. Explain. Like, simple things. And I would have to say to them, no, you need to explain that to me. And they'd start telling me and I'd be like, I don't get it. Say more, And so it was like really relearning again and learning a new way of being and having the curiosity and the inquisitiveness to go, is this it? Because if this is it, I actually don't want to be here anymore. And that was honest. I just didn't want to be that way anymore. I didn't want to live at that. And I figured that there had to be a better way. There had to, because not everybody was as miserable as me. Not everybody was, trying to please everybody else and not doing anything at all that they loved. And not everybody else didn't want to be in the company of their partner. And, there were all these things that was showing me this whole thing of there's got to be a different way.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what led me down the path. And so the internal scaffolding were the books I read and the tools I found and the meditations and all those things that I could do myself to help me when my face was, when I was face down in the mud and didn't know which way to move and didn't know how to get up and felt stuck. It was that internal scaffolding. And I had this incredible external scaffolding, and I still do, of trusted healers and professionals and allied health professionals and regular, doctors and Western health professionals, like everybody who I could go, okay, who do I need help from? And the answer would drop in. It still does. Okay, I'm going through this. I'm too close to see it. Who do I need to go see? All of a sudden, a name will come in and I'll ring them. I've got the perfect example, actually. Thursday week ago, I got this lady's name in and I was like, oh yeah, I need to go see her again soon, as we do as humans. Tuesday morning, I woke up and went, I wonder what her availability is. And I Googled it because I know her booking system, obviously. And that day I had a whole heaps of stuff in the morning and I had a client at 4:15. She just happened to have a 2:00 appointment, which gave me enough time to get home and rest before my client and get all the stuff I needed to get done in the morning. I'm like, okay, thank you, universe. You've just pushed me.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I booked, and it was the most incredible session.
It's creating space and tapping out of the habits, the thinking habits, the routine, and you then things will open and will come through that affirmations and that open space as you in a lot of your posts. And I really like that.
Yeah.
It is creating that time that, if you will, the universe is going to throw so many different things at us. It's understanding that which is going to benefit us and the people around us. And if you will, once you get out of your own way, then you can start. And a lot of people are like, oh, you should go help other people. But wait, I have to help me first, right? A lot of people forget that part. A lot of people are out there helping other people. Meanwhile, they're miserable, like you said, and you don't understand who you are. I think the best thing, we all say it, is when we get on an airplane, whose mask should you put on first?
Yeah.
You. And then we can help other people. Amanda, it's we are into an hour. I think we can talk to you for another 5 days straight. We're loving this.
Oh, there's so much to dive into. I love it. I love it. And I love that you guys are willing to go there and willing to ask the questions, because, and I think that is really what drew me to you both is that desire to not just skim the surface, to look at what else is there. Yeah. And, with what you were saying before, Rafael, I think it's so important, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. I was asked in one of the podcasts that I recorded what my top value was, and I said self-mastery, and he said, well, doesn't that make you selfish? And he said, and he didn't ask me in a way that was like accusatory, but he said, some people think it's because you're being selfish and all the rest. And I said, this is the bit about the work that we are doing that I think really needs to be kind of hammered home, and not with a Fisher-Price hammer. We're talking a proper big hammer here. We're doing some serious work.
Yes.
It is the fact that the more that we work on ourselves, the more that we ask our questions of ourselves, the more that we deep dive into what is holding us back, or what we need to change, or what we need to evolve into, the more that we know ourselves deeply, and the more that we can love our shadows. I joke about the fact that people talk about their love and light and all of this, and I'm like, yeah, but we also have to acknowledge our shadows and shit. Let's face it. Yeah, 100%. We can't have one without the other. The more that we can love those shadowy parts of ourselves and accept why they're there, and be generous to them and be kind to them when they rear their heads, the more we see it in other people, and the more we can be kind and generous and accepting and loving to them as well. So our self-mastery, our self-inquiry, our self-ishness, which I think is a BS word, by the way, I think makes us more self-full. And it gives us all of that generosity to extend towards other people, because we've extended it to ourselves first. And the same way that we can only love others as much as we love ourselves, I think we can only extend as much kindness, generosity, empathy, compassion as we extend to ourselves. Yeah. And so it kind of takes us back to what you were talking about at the beginning. And I think that's just absolutely beautiful insight that you've mentioned a couple of times now of we do need to look after us first. And it doesn't go into selfishness at all. It makes us more giving and more of service.
Even the Dalai Lama says, and I've mentioned this probably on way too many broadcasts.
Never too many.
I had the pleasure to meet the Dalai Lama and tour with him, because I work in theatre, in the theatrical industry, and he would always say, you cannot give if you don't have. So you need that love to see the love in others and ignite that. So
100%.
Beautifully
Celeste,
said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we are wrapping it up.
Yes.
Amanda, don't go away. Stay in the background with us.
Yeah.
We want to wish everybody an amazing holiday. We love you. We love being part of this community. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Amanda. I love the fact that you have two first names. Come on.
I made my middle name my surname after divorce because I didn't want my ex-husband's name, and I realized that all surnames usually belong to men, and so I made my middle name my surname.
Good
There
on
you
you.
go.
So that's the two first name story.
There you go. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. So everybody, happy holidays. It doesn't matter what religion you are, you should still celebrate life, right?
Yeah.
Whether you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, or any other religion or any
You
other
try.
aspect, just celebrate life. Every day we get a chance to be amazing. We are the only animal in the world that can make the distinction, and we can make ourselves happier by the actions we take. Thank you, everybody. Celeste, love you, girl.
Sending love from Queensland to everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.